This is measure 1 to 2, an overview of left hand technique. First thing you want to do is pre-plant the first chord. In other words, place all 4 fingers down before you play one note. That way you're certain that the first measure will go well for the left hand. Now, you can do it without the bar like this, or you can use an optional 5-string bar, which we'll talk about in a moment. Either way, pre-plant everything. Now, the problem here, measure 1 to 2, is getting a smooth change. The tendency will be to clip the last note of measure 1 like this. And that's no good. We don't want to clip that note short like that. We want to connect it as best as we can. Now, one option is simply to be careful and not to clip the note, not to lift early. Like that. But it's a tough change, and there's a high likelihood that you're going to miss that change. So one thing you can do, you can use an optional bar. You can bar 5 strings at the 4th fret. And what that does, it gives you the first finger as your guide finger to just slide up 2 frets for the bass note, for the D sharp. Then all you have to do is land the 2nd finger on the 1st string. So it gives you a lot of stability and will help prevent you from clipping that G sharp. Now notice that when we do the change, we only land the 1st finger and the 2nd finger, and then we add the 3rd finger and the 4th fingers later as we come to those notes. We do not try to grab the entire chord, no way. Just the 1st finger and the 2nd finger. Now the problem with the bar is that it can be noisy. You can get, string noises, even squeaks sometimes. So if that's the case, you may not want to use the bar. But if you can do it like I'm doing and not get the string noise and get very little squeak, it might be a good way to go to give yourself stability to make that chord change. If you do squeak and the bar is not an option, then go without the bar. But here's another option for you. Take the 2nd finger as you play the last note of measure 1 and pre-plant it on the 1st string, and that becomes your guide finger to go to measure 2. Gives you a lot of stability. So all you have to worry about is slapping the bar down across there. So it looks like this. Plant it and slide. Very good way to go. The disadvantage of that is that you do lift the E early in order to move it over to pre-plant, so the E gets chopped off. But I have to say, most people are they're listening to the melody and the last 2 notes of the measure. They're not going to hear that E being cut short to get to the next chord. And another option is to use both. Do the bar and do the pre-plant. So it looks like this. You're doing the bar. You lift the 2nd finger early to pre-plant it. Then you have both fingers down, and all you have to do is slide up, and you can't miss the change. And you won't be tempted to clip that last note of measure 1 short either, because it makes the change so secure. Bar, pre-plant, and make the shift. That's almost foolproof. That's a good way to go. But again, if the bar is too noisy for you, if you don't like lifting that 2nd finger early to pre-plant it, then you're left with just trying to do the change with none of that and just going for it and hoping you land it. So you'll just have to try all those things out. On the 2nd measure, too, the obvious choice is a 5-string bar, but some players may have trouble getting the 5-string bar to come out clearly, so if that's the case, you might try a 6-string bar. It might work better. The sound will be the same, it's just whatever comes out the best. And then another option is to use a partial bar barring only the 3rd, 4th, and 5th strings, like that. Some people may be more successful using that. Again, you just have to try out the different options. The final consideration on the first 2 measures, and actually for most of the piece, is that you want a continuous vibrato to make the sound shimmer, to make the melody full, and to just add that glorious tone quality to the entire piece. You really want that. So get used to using continuous vibrato throughout.